Efforts do continue to collect remnants of that Chinese spy balloon shot down by the U.S. over the Atlantic Ocean over the weekend. As you know, that balloon was first spotted over Montana last week, China claiming it was a weather balloon that blew off course, but the Pentagon saying nope, it was a surveillance or spy balloon. I do want to bring in Dr. Howard Stoffer, a professor of national security at the University of New Haven, to discuss this a little further. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So first off, your thoughts overall on how all of this has played out over the last week or so?
Well, I think it's a huge story. The Chinese made a major mistake. They've been doing this for years, but never got caught. And now, the U.S. picked up this balloon over the Aleutian Islands on January 28th, but didn't know where it was going, thinking maybe Canada. And then it was spotted over Montana. And I think the Chinese realize now that this is a mistake, even though they did it in the past over the U.S. And now this is going to have a bump in the road to U.S.-China relations.
And that's what I was going to ask. Do you feel that overall this is going to impact those relations and the relationship there between the U.S. and China?
Yes, I do. I think it'll impact it for a while. Blinken's trip to China was just postponed. It wasn't canceled. So he will be going at some point. Just as when Nancy Pelosi last year went to Taiwan, there was a furious reaction from the Chinese, but that eventually calmed down, blew over. And, the relationship is so complex between the United States and China. We need to talk to these people. And of course, they're not the Russians. They're not conducting a war, a hot war, where thousands of people are getting killed or injured in Ukraine.
And how does all of this work? You're talking about collecting data. Does it just feed automatically back to China? Does it have to travel all the way back to China? Is that even known at this point?
Well, that's a good question, because that's why the military didn't want to shoot it down over Montana. First of all, they didn't want a debris field, as there's in the Atlantic now, 7 miles. They also wanted to preserve the payload that was on that balloon. So now they're picking it up out of the Atlantic and trying to determine a number of things. They want to see what data was intercepted, if any. They want to see if it has satellite links to be able to give real-time data back to China. They want to see what the vulnerabilities are of this particular balloon or this particular type of balloon system. And finally, they're looking to see if the technology in that balloon is similar to what the U.S. has, and they can determine if the Chinese were able to steal it from the U.S. and make a determination in that way. So it was very wise to let it wait and fly over the U.S. We were able to put up, signals intelligence blocks so that they really couldn't pick up anything except, unclassified internet information over the U.S.
And so the next question is, they're obviously over in the Atlantic Ocean trying to collect the remnants, the debris from this, in the hopes that they can gather a little bit more information about what it was tracking. What are the odds, and again, this is not a specific question because it's very difficult to predict this sort of thing, but what are the odds they will actually be able to gather any information from those remnants?
Well, I think they'll be able to get a lot of information. And of course, one of the things they're worried about, and another reason not to shoot it down, is there might have been a self-destruct mechanism. And if it landed on the ground, it might have blown up. So in the ocean, it didn't do that. If they find out any of the information that I just described, I doubt that we will know about it, except the government may just say, we learned a lot. Thank you, China, for letting us look at this balloon up close. There is a province in Hainan that sends out these balloons. They've been sending them out for years, and at least 6 or more have gone over the U.S. in the last 5 or 6 years. So this is a brand new opportunity to stop this kind of intrusion and sovereign interference with the United States.
China's saying, of course, that this is a weather balloon. It appears they're sticking to that story that it blew off course. But, I mean, in your experience here, that is not the case. I know the Pentagon is also saying there's no way. It is definitely a surveillance balloon.
Yes, it's exactly right. It is a surveillance balloon, and it was designed to fly over specific areas. It flew over Montana, where we have our, ICBM nuclear fields located, missile bases located. Flew over North Dakota. And then it flew over other parts of the U.S., Pennsylvania, New York, and eventually over South Carolina into the Atlantic. And so this has clearly been steered. It can be steered. It's very hard to steer it at 65,000 feet, but it clearly was designed not for a weather balloon. If they want to know what the weather is, they could just check with the U.S., and we'd be happy to tell them what the weather is doing over the United States.
So we do know that there are other spy balloons from China that are apparently over, one of them possibly over Latin America. And it does appear that during Trump's administration, several of them went undetected as they went through the U.S. That's, of course, up for debate, depending on who you ask there. But does it almost seem, based on this situation, like China maybe wanted to be seen? They wanted the U.S. to know that this balloon was up there.
Well, I'll answer that last question first. And yes, there have been other balloons that went over the U.S., particularly one that went over Florida when President Trump was in office. But I think that China didn't want this to happen. It looks like one hand didn't know what the other hand was doing. We've had that happen before, where one hand wasn't sure what the other hand was doing. This might have been sent out, and President Xi was looking forward to welcoming, the Secretary of State for improving relations with China.
All right. So we know, of course, that we are going to try to work to get some more information about what is actually inside that Chinese spy balloon, how it works. Do you have any idea on the inner workings of a balloon like this? Because we know that several other countries apparently use them as well. It is not just China.
Yes. Well, first of all, you were right that there is a balloon that was reported to be over the country of Colombia and has now been sailing, I guess it's going east into Venezuela. There have been balloons over South Asia, East Asia, Europe. So they've been doing this for quite a long time. I don't know the technology. I don't think our country really knew the technology until now. They have this balloon and they can really study and see what it's doing. I don't see any point. I mean, they made a major mistake in sending this just before the secretary was going to be in China. It's a postponed trip. He'll be going at some point. You know, President Biden and President Xi had a very good set of talks at the G20 meeting in November. It put us back on course. But after Biden's State of the Union address, it's very clear we need guardrails. We need guardrails in the relationship, and to be able to say, you really can't do this. If you do this, it's going to affect so many other things that are important to both sides, like climate change discussions and pandemic discussions and other things where we're cooperating together. And of course, the economic relationship is still there. So it's important that the Chinese military and our military can talk to each other. It was very unfortunate that when our Secretary of Defense called and asked to speak to his counterpart in China, they refused to talk to him on Saturday. That was a huge mistake, and that's something that should have been corrected. And it would have alleviated, I think, some of the tension that's now emanated from this event. But I think this will be a one-off. I'm very sure that they're not going to be doing this anytime soon again. And unless they want to blow up relations when there is a problem. But it reminds me of what happened in '59. We had a U-2 flight over the Soviet Union, and Francis Gary Powers was shot down, and that ended the chance of a meeting between Eisenhower and Khrushchev. But a year later, Kennedy met Khrushchev in Vienna, and it all worked out. So I do believe that this will pass as well.
So you don't believe that it will permanently impact the U.S. and China relations? Because we know what happened when Nancy Pelosi did go over to Taiwan. There were questions here about, what was going to happen, the impact, but you do not believe at this point that the U.S. and China relations have been severely impacted in a way that can't be repaired.
No, of course not. I think this is going to blow over as a single event. The Chinese will, they did express regret, which is very unusual for them. And of course, their reaction to Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan was furious and angry. And they had all kinds of air violations of the airspace of Taiwan for weeks afterwards. But I think this is going to die down, be quiet. There'll be a point in time when I think Secretary of State will be able to be resuming his discussions in China. And it's important to remember otherwise, too, that there are a number of states now trying to pass laws to make it impossible for China to buy land near American air bases, saying they're going to build a wind power facilities or solar power facilities. They want to pass these laws. California just had his governor veto that law, but Texas will probably pass that law. The only thing I want to say is that we should all be aware that we have a problem in the United States where Asians are being, discriminated against and attacked. This should be no excuse for anything like that. We should all remain calm. And, we have Chinese citizens, Americans who are Chinese of heritage. We have Chinese green card holders, and we got Chinese guests in the United States doing a lot of good for both countries. So we should be very moderate in how we respond to this particular event.
And that is a very good point, because unfortunately, when things like this happen, you do see that increase in, hate toward a specific group of people. So I appreciate you making that point there. Dr. Howard Stoffer, anything else that you do want to add before I let you go?
Well, I think that we should stay focused on the FBI Quantico Operational Technology Division, which is looking into all of this. They'll be obviously sending a report to the Secretary of Defense and to the President. And we'll see how this goes forward. Nick Burns, who's our ambassador in China, is one of the most sophisticated, wonderful guys. I worked with him when I was in the Foreign Service, and I think he's doing a great job in keeping everything on track. I'm sure he'll be able to talk to the Chinese and indicate we can get another meeting going, and as long as we just recognize those guardrails and not do anything that would, upset the relationship again.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
9:09 over on the East Coast and 6:09